Good afternoon and welcome. This has been a productive summit, and I want to thank Chancellor Merkel for everything she's done to make it such a success. We've discussed a wide range of global issues here in Hamburg over the past 2 days, including counter-terrorism, modern slavery, climate change, and of course trade and the global economy. These global issues touch on critical national interests, from security to prosperity. They affect each and every one of us. Allow me to say a brief word on each. Firstly, terrorism. It is a threat facing us all, as we have sadly seen all too recently. As I said outside Downing Street after the terrible London Bridge attack, enough is enough. And I have called for a step change in domestic and international efforts to combat terrorism. Here in Hamburg, I have called on my G20 partners to ensure the global financial system is an entirely hostile environment for terrorists. We've agreed to take action in 2 specific areas. We need to ensure there are no safe spaces for terrorist financing by increasing capacity building and raising standards worldwide, especially in terrorist finance hotspots. And we will develop tools to better identify suspicious small flows of money being used to support terrorist activity. I've also called for the G20 to come together to better manage the risk posed by foreign fighters as they disperse from the battlefield in Syria and Iraq by improving international information sharing on the movement of individuals known to have travelled to Daesh territory. And we have agreed that we should work with other G20 member states to help counter violent extremism in their own countries, to halt the spread of extremist material and poisonous propaganda that is warping young minds. At the G7, I called for industry to take responsibility to more rapidly detect and report extremist content online. And last week, industry announced the launch of a global forum to do just that. We can change the balance of the fight when we work together, and I'm confident that through these efforts, we will defeat the scourge of terrorism and our collective values will prevail. Turning to modern slavery, the great human rights issue of our time. Tackling human trafficking and modern slavery remains a top priority for my government, and we are committed to stamping out this abhorrent crime. In the UK, we have set up the first ever government task force for modern slavery, bringing together every relevant department to coordinate and drive all our efforts in the battle against this cruel exploitation. But if we are to eradicate modern slavery around the world, we need to go much further. Victims will only find freedom if we cultivate a radically new, global and coordinated approach. And that's why at this summit, I've called on my G20 partners to follow Britain's lead in working with businesses at home to ensure they report any modern slavery in their supply chains. Like other world leaders here, I'm dismayed at the US decision to pull out of the Paris Agreement, and I've urged President Trump to rejoin the Paris Agreement. The UK's own commitment to the Paris Agreement and tackling global climate change is as strong as ever. Not only will this protect the environment for future generations, it will keep energy affordable and maintain a secure and reliable supply in order to protect the interests of businesses and consumers. We play a leading role internationally, and we're delivering on our commitments to create a safer, more prosperous future for us all. Finally, on trade, the UK is a leading advocate for free trade and open markets, for the World Trade Organization, and for a global economy that works for everyone. But as I have emphasised here at this summit, it is also important that we acknowledge some people feel left behind by globalisation and that not all countries are playing by the rules. We have agreed that countries should step up the action they are taking to address the dumping of steel on global markets. And we're all in agreement that women should be empowered economically. That is good for business and good for society. So the G20 has agreed to create better job opportunities for women, to remove the legal barriers and end the discrimination and gender-based violence that restrict opportunities both at home and abroad. I've encouraged leaders to take steps to make the international trading system work better, to ensure that all our citizens can share in the benefits of the global economy. Britain has always been a great trading nation, And as we leave the European Union, we will seize the exciting opportunities to strike deals with old friends and new partners. I've held a number of meetings with other world leaders at this summit and have been struck by their strong desire to forge ambitious new bilateral trading relationships with the UK after Brexit. This is a powerful vote of confidence in British goods, British services, Britain's economy and the British people, and we look forward to building on these conversations in the months ahead. Thank you. Now I'll take some questions. John?
Prime Minister, do you accept that if EU leaders insist on tougher trade terms after Brexit than those we have now, there's a risk that the UK could end up worse off whatever deals you may strike with America or Japan or anyone else?
What we are doing, John, is working to negotiate a good, comprehensive free trade agreement with the European Union. And I'm confident that we will get a good deal with the EU because it's not just about what is in the interests of the United Kingdom, it's about what's in the interests of the remaining 27 member states, remaining 27 countries in the European Union. And I think it's in the interests of both sides to have that good trade agreement. But I'm also optimistic about the opportunities that we will see around the rest of the world. Some of the countries I've been talking to here who've shown great interest in working with us on trade arrangements in the future, the United States, Japan, China, India, these are all huge world economies. This is an important development for the United Kingdom, and I look forward to developing those trade deals as well. Yes.
As only two female G20 leaders, what did you make earlier of Donald Trump talking about women's empowerment? Is that slightly ironic when you consider some of the sexist remarks he's made in the past? And when can we look forward to welcoming President Trump to Britain?
Well, on the last point, we don't have a date yet. We're still working on a date for when he will be making that visit. But on the first point, we've actually done some important work here on the whole question of women's empowerment. First of all, this morning, we launched the Women Entrepreneurs Financing Initiative. The UK is contributing to that, as are other countries from the G20. That was an initiative that was actually very much developed by Ivanka Trump and worked with the World Bank on that. And I think that's an important initiative, because it makes good sense, not just for women themselves, not just for society, but actually it's good economic sense to ensure that the talents of everybody in a population are being used. And this is, I think, hugely important for developing economies. And we certainly support that, as we have done in our own development aid work as a United Kingdom. We've put a huge emphasis on financing going to projects that involve women and girls, particularly, obviously, ensuring girls' education. Anybody else who's got... Thorsten?
Prime Minister, I wonder what kind of reaction did you get from other world leaders in regards to Brexit, and especially what kind of advice when it comes to the future relationship between Britain and Europe?
Well, the reaction I've got from other world leaders is the optimism that they show about the arrangements that we can have with the United Kingdom and those countries, as I've said, like the United States and Japan, India and China and others that I've spoken to here, for our future trade arrangements and the way in which we can build on economic cooperation for the benefit not just of their citizens, but crucially for the benefit of UK citizens, because that trade is about bringing jobs, prosperity and opportunity to the United Kingdom. And in looking at the arrangements that we have in relation to our future relationship with the European Union, as I just said in answer to one of the earlier questions, I think it is in the interests of both sides in this negotiation to ensure we have that deep and special partnership for the future. We're leaving the European Union, we're not leaving Europe, and we will continue to cooperate and work with our European partners.
Thank you. Prime Minister, Donald Trump says that we could get a trade deal very, very quickly, but he's not someone who's always seen through his promises to the American people. He said he'd build a wall. He said that he'd renegotiate NAFTA. He said he'd repeal Obamacare. While I'm sure you will welcome his intervention, will you approach it in a sceptical and cautious way?
I will approach it in an optimistic way and a very positive way, and that's exactly what we're doing. We've already started talking with the Americans. Work is, as Liam Fox was over, the Trade Secretary was over in the United States just a week or two ago, talking to their Trade Minister about the opportunities, and the work has already continued. So we're optimistic and positive about this. James.
Prime Minister, that work you're talking about, is that about new trading arrangements, or is that about simply replacing the arrangements we already have through the EU, which the UK will need just to stand still?
Well, there's a number of things that we're talking about, actually. We're talking, yes, we will talk about where there are countries that have existing arrangements with the European Union, what arrangement we can come to so that we ensure we have a smooth process of leaving the EU. But in talking to countries like America and India, we're also talking about what we can do already in terms of improving our trade relationship and leading into future trade agreements with them after we've left the European Union. As you probably know, legally there's a limit to what can be done, what can actually be enacted before we leave the European Union. But we're looking to make sure that we make the best of the opportunities and seize the opportunities that are available to us in the run-up of leaving the European Union and when we actually leave. Faisal.
Prime Minister, some argue that this was quite a fractious G20 meeting with the emergence of a G19 and a one in the US seeking to rip up global rules on trade and on climate change. And it was President Macron waving his iPhone around, proclaiming the future of the market-based global rules on trade. Is that a fair reflection? And would you want to have been in the forefront of defending rules-based systems on trade and climate change?
Well, actually what we have is an agreed communiqué which sets out very clearly an approach from around the table, from the G20 in relation to trade matters. I was very clear and I was advocating. I've said I want global Britain to be one of the biggest and strongest advocates for free trade around the world. It's exactly what I did when I contributed to the debate that was taking place. I made very clear that the importance of trade, because trade brings prosperity, growth and jobs. And that's what we want to see. But I also said that we do need to see the World Trade Organization reforming in some ways so that that organisation works better. We want that multilateral rules-based framework, but we need to ensure that it is working as effectively as it can be. I'll take the last couple of questions. Ben?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Ben Glaze, Daily Mirror. You've just told us that you're dismayed by the US decision to pull out of the Paris Agreement, yet you had 50 minutes this morning with President Trump and you didn't even bring it up. Why not?
Well, I did bring the issue of the climate change agreement up with President Trump. I've had a number of conversations with him over the time that I've been here at the G20. When I brought it up with him, what I did was encouraged him to bring the United States back into the Paris Agreement. And I continue to hope that that is exactly what the United States will do.
Caroline Wheeler, The Sunday Times. Just talking about the bilateral with Donald Trump today, he talked about the close relationship between Britain and the United States. On that basis, you would expect that he would want to come and visit our wonderful country sooner rather than later. Given your discussions, is it your expectation that he will visit this year? And if not, do you anticipate that you'll still be Prime Minister by the time he does come to Britain?
I'm looking forward to welcoming President Trump when he comes to the United Kingdom. We're working on what a suitable date would be for such a visit. He said, he made it very clear at the beginning of our bilateral that he was very keen to come to London. He's keen to continue building on what, as you say, has over the years been a special relationship. But I believe there are many areas, including the trade area we've just talked about, where we can build on that relationship to our mutual benefit for the future.